This is update for December 12th, 2022, day 292 of the war, end of the date update. So today I'm gonna start as usually with general strategic topics, and then we're gonna walk through the front line in Ukraine. So first, Turkey is allowing now export of Russian crude. If you remember, there was a bottleneck. Turkish authorities didn't allow passage of Russian tankers through Bosphorus and Dardanelles straits because they claimed they didn't have proper maritime insurance. Now somehow this problem got resolved. Somehow I would say not because Russian tankers somehow got maritime insurance. Apparently there was some kind of backdoor deal reached between Turkey and Russia. So now Russian crude is freely flowing to Asia. Speaking about that, the shipping of Russian crude by seaborne routes went up to 3.5 million barrels per day. Just a reminder, Russia producing 11 million barrels per day. So all of that is going to Asia, typically India, China, Turkey, Pakistan, as you can imagine, all basically everything Asia. And so that's actually, this embargo, whatever you call it, price ceiling, completely not working because Russian crude just switched sort of direction, and from going to Europe now it's going to Asia. Yes, it is selling at discount at the same time, and this is we're talking about the Urals, right? If we talking Far Eastern Russian blend, it's not. It's their discount is extremely minimal, and so Russia gets pretty much full price without any problems. So again, this whole export, crude oil price ceiling simply does not work and will never work. On a related issue, apparently Russia and India signed agreements so that Russian banks can make payments in rupees and accept in India rupees. So now Russia can directly sort of do payments without need to use euros or US dollars. So that essentially guarantees security of the payments. And so, that's another blow to this whole idea of blocking Russian energy exports. Then related to the situation in Russia, so what Russian government is doing internally is they are increasing taxes on natural resource producing companies. So if you remember, Gazprom had to pay more in taxes to Russian government. Now they increasing taxes on diamond mining. So that's a Russian company called Alrosa. I'm sure there are smaller ones, but basically that's a sign of desperation of the Russian government that they try to basically milk whatever they can milk, wherever they can milk, and obviously, large companies, natural resource producing companies, perfect target for that. Then let's switch a little bit to China. So China actually prohibited export of a Lugansk processor that it internally developed. It's a 12 nanometers technology. So if you remember, the latest and greatest right now is 3.5. 7 still considered to be pretty advanced, but as you can imagine, 12 nanometers is pretty good on relative scale. So it's not top notch, but it's still good enough. Let's put it this way. So even without with all of this U.S. Export bans, China still capable producing processors, relatively modern processors for its military equipment specifically. The same time, U.S. continuing pushing, against the, trying to sort of limit the ability of China to produce semiconductors. So if you remember, I mentioned about a week or 2 weeks ago, US was asking Netherlands to stop selling semiconductor manufacturing equipment, and specifically ASML company ASML. That's the largest one. Apparently, also US is in talks with Japanese competitors of ASML to stop selling semiconductor manufacturing equipment to China. So basically, US is essentially pulling all plugs right now. It's also not a sign of good situation. It's I would say this. I would say that's a sign of desperation for the US. At the same time, if you remember, I mentioned the visit to Persian Gulf, that it went well. So we're seeing more and more sort of signs of that. There are news or rumors that China and Saudi Arabia signed agreement, some signed many agreements worth at least now $50 billion. Before I reported it was around 29. Now it's went up to 50. And then another important one is that Saudi Arabia signed agreement with Huawei for cloud computing, basically supporting all sort of like technology needs in Saudi Arabia. Just as a reminder, Huawei built a 5G network in Persian Gulf. So it's essentially what this what this really means is that technologically, uh, Persian Gulf is already basically in hands of China, because if you supplying this communication equipment, which is what Huawei, the sort of specialty, really core business is communication equipment for internet essentially, and for phones, and meaning like the all kinds of communication, and then you have ability to basically spy on whoever buys your equipment, which I'm pretty sure China is doing sort of in large numbers. But this again says that Persian Gulf is aligned with China, not with the West, and that's just sort of a very clear sign and answer to West. Then about Ukraine. Ukraine got 655 millimeter howitzers from France, named TRF-1. Then not as advanced. They don't have 52 calibers barrel. That's only 40, so it's relatively old equipment, but at the same time, it's a good match relative to what Russia has. Except the number 6, as you can imagine, it's makes me laugh. Let's put this way. But Ukraine obviously grateful to France for even 6 units of that. Now let's switch to actual situation in Ukraine. So the first of all, power grid. Power grid is on the edge, not getting better, not getting worse. So kind of like in coma, I would say. That's probably the best way to describe it. So how long it will remain in coma, unclear. In terms of being destroyed, yeah, there's one more Russian attacks, like how it used to be on, I think last one was on November 23rd, and obviously power grid is done in Ukraine. So whether it's gonna die on its own remains to be seen, but it's obviously severely crippled. So now let's actually switch to the front line. As a general sort of strategic kind of remark, it's becoming more and more clear that Russian troops are becoming sort of more aggressive, more sort of willing to start attack and take initiative from Ukrainian hands. So that's just sort of the key point, and this process is slow. It's going to be a slow process, but it's the more and more signs of that emerge. Let's actually start walkthrough in a clockwise fashion, starting from very north. Situation along the state border is more or less stable, relatively few activity. Now let's jump to North Lugansk front line. Looks like Russian, as you can see, there's a lot of Russian activity for the day, and it looks like uh, Russian command decided to sort of pursue opportunities in this area, or at least push. Maybe a better way to say it, to interpret this is to push Ukrainian troops basically behind the Skill River and behind Siversky Donetsk. So basically, recover what they lost to ensure security of Svatov and basically Starodubitsk, and security of this Severodonetsk and Rubizhne. There is no Ukrainian attack that threatens basically rear of the Russian troops on the North Donbass front line. So that's probably the objective of this operation. But and I'm not saying that for sure it has started, but it's becoming, sort of more clear and evident that this is probably what's happening here. As sort of things develop, I'll be able to sort of confirm more, or just say no, this is just a local attacks, and you know but at the same time, this number of attacks, they cannot be local. And in Asia, there's a correction here. So it looks like Ukrainian troops in this area, Raihorodka and Kovalivka, are actually on the western side of this tiny stream or tiny river, and the Russian troops on the eastern. So essentially the river divides. So there is no Ukrainian bridgehead on this side. So this was error, and I'm correcting that. Now let's jump to North Donbass front line. Things here are pretty active, as you can imagine. Russian attacks in all main places. No major breakthrough, but that's just kind of how everything is. Both sides, just in terms of losses, both sides are suffering pretty heavy losses. There's no sort of numbers. On the Ukraine side, I would single out 57th Brigade that's suffering really heavy losses, fighting with Wagner mercenaries, and pretty sure that Wagner mercenaries also suffering very heavy losses there as well. Oh, sorry. Now, south of Bakhmut, situation is also, in the same way. Russian troops are attempting to sort of exploit their initial successes here, and basically they want to clear up this eastern side, everything on the eastern side of this channel, essentially, of this Dnipro-Donbass freshwater channel. Essentially, they just want to get here and then attack towards Ivanivsky, at which point it will become extremely difficult to hold to Bakhmut, and that's the whole point. And as I said before, Russian side clearly declared that the whole point is to create mean grinder and unbearable situation for Ukrainian side. Also, Russian troops started attacking towards Donetsk. That's sort of relatively new direction, and obviously not a positive development there either. But at the same time, Ukrainian lines held today, which honestly doesn't mean anything. Could easily fall tomorrow. Now let's jump to Central Donbass front line. Things here are relatively quiet, so just some weak attacks north of Avdiivka, some fighting in Marinka. Russian side is claiming that they're now controlling 70% of Marinka. Whether it's true or not, impossible to verify. If there is more sort of information appears, I'll definitely provide updates. And then Russian troops continuing attacking Valeka Novosilka without any success so far. Now let's quickly jump to Zaporizhya front line, and here everything is sleepy, as it always is. Thanks for watching, and until tomorrow, bye bye.